It's as if they're cosplaying as sane people. You know, when you cosplay, you try to take on the characteristics, whether it's physical features or speech patterns or whatever, of something that you're not. You are not Superman. You are not Batman. You're cosplaying as such. I am Batman. Anyway, the Democrats are cosplaying, especially in the Senate, as if they are sane, rational people. Welcome to the National Briefing. This is Kelly Nash. And there is nobody, I mean, first off, look, not all of them do it. You've got like Rosa DeLuca from my home state of Connecticut, who is just completely out there as a whack job with the purple hair and whatnot. She doesn't care because she's not trying to aspire to anything greater than what she is, which is a House member representing an insane portion of New England. She's happy with that job. That's great. However, there are other people who are aspirational. They want to be the next Chuck Schumer. They want to be the next Hakeem Jeffries. And with that in mind, we're going to go to Senator Chris Van Hollen. Now, the senator was at a hearing yesterday, and this is just a little brief snippet of what the senator had to say.
The big lie that what the Trump administration is doing is going after the worst of the worst. The overwhelming majority of people who are in detention right now, by ICE's own admission, pose no risk to public safety.
Now, we've heard that statement phrased differently, and but often by the Democrats, that the vast majority, it's like 70 to 80% of the ICE detainees, they didn't even break any law other than the little tiny weeny misdemeanor of just sneaking into the country. Other than that, these are perfectly great Americans, but they're not Americans. But besides all that, these are fantastic. These people are the salt of the earth. And you've thrown them into a detention facility for no reason. And it's not helping. You're making things worse by doing that. That's the basic position of the Democrat Party. Okay. Well, let's talk about that. How many people does ICE currently hold? Averaging between 70 and 73,000 people are in daily custody. Obviously, some of them get deported and more get brought in, but on average, it's about 70,000 people are being held anywhere in this country by ICE at any moment. And we got 100 facilities spread throughout the country. Now, when you're talking about the people that are being held, if you want to interpret the data the way they're interpreting the data, you can make that statement. Now, I will go back to October of 2024. So Donald Trump is not the president. Joe Biden and his very lax open border policies are in charge. At that time, we were averaging somewhere around 14 to 15,000 people a day in ICE detention facilities. Of them, you had roughly 9,000 or so would be convicted criminals that had already been convicted of a crime. They're just awaiting deportation. Then you've got about 4,000 a day that would be what they would call pending charges. They were arrested in the act of a crime. In the process of that, we found out they're not from this country. We're probably going to end up deporting you before we have to use the taxpayer money to send you to a trial. And then you'd have 1,000 or so every day that had nothing. They're just illegal aliens. Why are they in ICE detention under Joe Biden? Well, let's play this out. So you go month to month, and it's pretty much the same until we get to February of 2025, and you see a spike. Obviously, Trump is now taking office. Now, the convicted criminals goes up over 11,000. Then the pending criminal charges goes up to around 7,000. And then the other ones, have no other pending charges. That's about 3,000 a day. It continues to climb. By the time you get to the summer, like let's take a look at August. In August, we've got about 17,000 convicted criminals being held in ICE detention. We've got another 15,000 that have pending criminal charges against them. And at that point, you've got roughly another 15,000 again, their only crime was breaking into the country. That's the lie. Finally, the last numbers we have are January of this year. At that point, again, we're still averaging about 17,000 convicted criminals on any day sitting in an ICE detention facility. Don't you feel good knowing that there's 17,000 convicted criminals sitting in an ICE detention facility instead of walking amongst you, especially in you sanctuary states and cities? You should be so thankful for that, because that's usually where it was happening. There's another 17,000. So now we're at 34,000. If you just do basic math, 17,000. There's 34,000, but this is 17,000 with the pending criminal charges. They were arrested in the act, or they were reasonable suspicion that they were involved in some sort of crime. And then there's about 25,000 who, again, their only crime was sneaking into the country. But why was it that you had 1,000 a day under Biden? Now we're up to 25,000. What is going on here? What's actually happening is these are illegal aliens who may have done some other crimes. We don't know, but we know that they actively stuck their nose into the business of these other 17,000 or so every day that are getting arrested for their pending criminal charges, or the other 17,000 a day that are getting arrested with their already convicted. These are family members, people like that, who are like, no, don't take my husband, don't take my brother, don't take my whatever, and they get involved. There is also, by the way, thousands of American citizens that are not sitting in ICE detention facilities, but they're being arrested. And their crime is, again, getting involved with the detention of illegal aliens. So when Chris Von Hollen and the Democrats are posing as if these are just good people, and Donald Trump is targeting them, he's got ICE out there. They're using the term like secret police. They're going door to door. They're arresting Americans now. They're arresting great people. That's totally false. You're a liar, Chris. Now, this is not the first time Chris Von Hollen has been a liar. Let me take you all the way, and I mean, I've got thousands of examples, but let me take you back to 2019. First Trump administration, Chris Von Hollen, the Democrats have shut the government down. Are you kidding me? I didn't think Democrats ever went for government shutdowns. Turns out whenever there's a Republican in office, they love shutting the government down. He's being, I will say, kid-gloved by Chuck Todd on the Meet the Press broadcast back in 2019. And Chuck had this question.
Let's give him something to get out of this. We got to reopen the government.
Well, it all depends on what you mean by something, but no one's going to give him $5 billion for an unnecessary and ineffective wall, because in addition to the $5 billion this year, the same thing will happen next year. This wall doesn't cost $5 billion. This is something like $28 to $30 billion. As Senator Langford pointed out, this administration, in their own budget this year, only asked for $1.6 billion. They haven't even spent all of the $1.3 billion that was provided last year.
If he said, I'll take the 1.6, I know that you guys have taken that off the table. At that point, though, would you be like, fine, let's get out of this thing?
No, look, we were very clear. The 1.6, the way it was written, also had language saying it's not for a wall. If the president's talking about border security money, we've already provided it. We're happy to have a conversation about border security. He just needs to stop deluding his followers and the country about this idea of a 2,000-mile wall.
So there you go. We had shut down the government 7 years ago, because Chris Von Hollen and the Democrats didn't want Donald Trump to spend $1 billion on a wall. What would that $1 billion have done? Let's just take a look at today. Let's take a look at what happened in February of 2025. In February of 2025, they were able to complete roughly 9 miles of wall. That 9 miles of wall had border crossings drop by 90%. You're telling me the walls don't work? That is, again, the gaslighting of America. 9 miles, we're down 90%. Now, we're going to build this flipping wall coast to coast, Chris. And let's just, again, go with the argument that you're presenting. It's ineffective. It doesn't work. Okay. In your budget, we have trillions of dollars for stupid stuff like, can we gayify maps? That's an actual congressional testimony. Why can we make the maps of other countries gayer? That's what you wanted to spend the money on. We wanted to spend the money on walls to protect our country. And now the walls have been proven to work. Are you going to come back again and say that that's a lie? Are you going to say that are you going to say, like when you talk about ICE, there was a headline yesterday, 400 convicted sex offenders taken off the streets in Houston the last month. That happened in America. That happened in Houston, Texas. Why? Because the quote-unquote secret police caught them. The people of Houston, just one American city, are infinitely better off today because of the work of ICE. And you sit there with your smugness and go have margaritas with these people and act as if, no. By the way, Mr. Fine Maryland man is a human trafficker. And that's who you have chosen to side with. The Democrats are choosing human traffickers, sex offenders, and anybody who's not sane and or white American people. That's who they hate. Chris Van Hollen hates himself, I would guess, because he is a white heterosexual male. You must hate yourself. How have you not resigned your office in shame yet, Van Hollen? All right. I've worked myself up enough to start the day. I hope you have let's have a great Wednesday, everybody.